Hello again. We're back again with another special series of The Fact, which discuss international issues. Today we have a special guest. We have Professor Alexander Dugin from Russia. He is a political scientist and analyst, and we would like to talk about different issues concerning Russia in this episode. I would like to thank Mr. Dugin for accepting our invitation. Okay, for the first question, I would like to ask you, Professor, about the reason and depth behind the relations between Russia and Israel. As you know, there are many aspects that these two countries are trying to negotiate with each other or talk with each other. And we would like to know about the depth of such relations and negotiations and the reason behind that.
So first of all, we need to put that in the concrete context. The relations between Russia and Israel were different in the history. They depended on the ideological regimes in Russia. And in order to understand the nature of these relations, we need to understand that, for example, some principles that are obvious for Iranians or Islamic world in general, fighting Israel by ideological and historical reasons, because Israel was created in the middle of the Islamic territories, destroyed the huge amount of people. That was a kind of catastrophe for Islamic world, and the feeling of this catastrophe was one of the most important emotion behind Iranian revolution. So that was solidarity with Palestine, Palestinians is and was one of the main feature of Iranian ideology. So, and that is not the case of Russia. So I invite to think in the much broader context. So if it is the constitutive part of Iranian political identity, it is not the constitutive part, the hatred for Israel. It is not the constitutive part of Russian politics. Second, so the relations toward Israel in the Russia is very different from Iranian one, but at the same time it is very different from, for example, American or European, because American government is under control of very, very powerful Israel and lobby, IPAC and the other structures, who tries to influence openly American politics, and Meir Shammer books demonstrates how deep the influence of Israel in United States is, and how it contradicts American geopolitical interests in Middle East and elsewhere. So there is nothing like that in Russia, because there is no dominance of pro-Israeli groups in Russia, Russian politics. They don't, if there are some pro-Israeli persons, they don't affect seriously Russian politics. And in that sense, we need to understand the difference. So there is huge control of Israelis in the United States, serious influence in Western Europe. There is totally opposite position in Iran and many other Muslim countries, and that is the middle. Russia is in the middle. That is very interesting position, because Russia tries to consider Israel as existing reality. It has nothing against the fact of existence of Israel, but there is nothing in common with unconditioned support for Israel. So Russia tries to be objective in some way. For example, supporting Palestinians' rights, at the same time trying to avoid the real risk or threats for Israel. That is the main frame of Russian-Israeli relations that we need to take in consideration. So that is balanced position, not in favor, not against Israel. Second, Mr. Putin, our president, is realist. So he, first of all, deals with the real balance of power. Israel is one of the power in the Middle East, so it need to be accepted like that. But in that balance of power, the only thing that Putin really rejects, it is hegemony of the West. When Israel plays an important role assuring this hegemony, so in that sense, Putin tries to change that situation, because Putin strongly believes in multipolarity and insists on a multipolar solution of all the problems on the Middle West, where there is obviously the voice of United States or Western Europe, but we should as well hear the voice, first of all, the regional population, Muslims, Arabs, and as well Israelis living in the region. And that multipolarity with realism, political realism, defines the relations between Moscow and Tel Aviv. First of all, we don't recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, where we strongly support the right of Palestinians, but at the same time, we try to avoid direct confrontation. So that is very useful, because already this relations to Israel, balanced relation, gives the possibility to change the Western hegemony in the region and to avoid direct confrontation. But the situation gets worse in Syria, where Israel tries to violate all the rules. Israel strikes against Syrian army troops, Iranian army troops, and sometimes already there is Israel threatens Russian presence, military presence. That goes out of the limits of the acceptable for Putin, and I think that in spite of this realist position and balanced position, there is not unconditioned position in favor of Israel. So Putin prefers to deal with open realist position of Netanyahu. He supported Netanyahu not because of his unconditioned support of Israel, but he prefers to have, for example, the man whose aggressiveness is open and not covert. So he prefers always to see the other in the face and to understand what the other thinks. But at the same time, it was not as well unconditioned support for Israel in his military position. For the same with Trump, for example, Putin is very happy in some way with the Trump, not because Trump is pro-Russia, but because Trump is realist, as Netanyahu is. So Putin prefers to deal with the person who say and do the same thing, and not say one thing and do the other.
For the last question, I would like to know about the common ideas that Shia ideology in the Middle East and elsewhere in the world might have with Orthodox ideology. Do you think these two have much of similarity or common ideas? And if there is such thing, how would be these similarities and what are these ideas?
That is very long history because I have written many books on that. First of all, I think that we have in common eschatological orientation of our world vision, not so much in ideology. In Iran, this Shia world vision is as well ruling ideology. And that is great because it puts in the correspondence religious understanding of the time, of the history, and political tendency, political structure. So that is in harmony, I would say. So Iranian religion, understanding of the end time and what is going on in the world, in Middle East, what is Dajjal, what is the awakening of Mahdi, all these deep religious ideas are embedded in political practice. That is not the case in Russia, because in Russia we have a state based on purely secular and pragmatic, materialist, political and materialist understanding of the reality that imitated from Western political system, but we have very strong religious tendency in the society that affects our president. So our president is closer to this religious understanding of the history than the state. There is, for example, the church and esoteric part of Christian tradition represented by Mount Athos, for example, the Russian starets, the spiritual tendency inside of Orthodox Christianity, and Putin on one side, and the secular state and secular population on the other. So that is not the same as in Iran. But what is important that this eschatological aspect, the idea of Antichrist ruling in the world in the end times, and the necessity to fight against is a necessity to return to the sacred roots of our tradition is very important and strong tendency, but not institutionalized yet. So there is the difference. So, but there is the common denominator. We see in the West Dajjal, Antichrist. We see in the materialism, capitalism, individualism of the West, globalism, liberalism, a kind of world ideology of the enemy of the humanity. And in transhumanism, in gender politics, we see how perverted this ideology of the West is. So we share the same garb zadagi, Wexification concept of Ahmad Fardit. So for us, the West is a poison. The Western ideology is a kind of plague, spiritual, conceptual, political, geopolitical, cultural plague. And that is inscribed in the logic of the history of the end time. It should come, it came, but it shouldn't be accepted. It should be fight with. So that is what unites Shia vision and Christian Orthodox esoteric understanding of the reality. But I think that in Sunni world and in Sufi above all, there is the same concern about Dajjal, about the necessity to return to the sacred roots. So Shia world and Sunni world and Sufi, Ibn Arabi vision of the Dajjal and of Mahdi as well, because Ibn Arabi recognized Mahdi as the last winner of the Dajjal. So there are many common points with this esoteric, spiritual, Orthodox Christianity of Russian starets, Russian hesychast tendency in Russian political hesychasm, I would call that. And there are many common points, and that is reflected in the modern politics. That is interesting, that we see now confirmation of the prophecies, real confirmations of the prophecies. For example, that Russia will participate in the final battle in the sacred land. But sacred land, holy land, it is Syria. We are now there. We were so distant, so far from that, from these prophecies. But now we are inside. And I think we should take in consideration more and more Gospels, Holy Scriptures, and this sacred text, because they really are based on eternal wisdom. They are not human creations. They are creation of God, and we should believe in that seriously, apply that to interpretation of the process, actual process in the politics and the culture. So everything is in holy books, and we should be loyal. We should follow the path of our parents, of our ancestors, but not only because of our loyalty to the past, because the God doesn't belong to the past. He is eternity. He is eternal being. So he is actual today, and he will more actual tomorrow. So this orientation to the final salvation of the world and coming of Mahdi in Iranian perspective, or second advent of the Christ in Christian Orthodox vision, that is the phenomenon of the future that already exists in the eternity, and more we are oriented to the eternity, more powerful, more strong we become.